Uniquely.
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 Issaquah.
Hi, welcome Adam to Uniquely Issaquah. I'm really excited to have you here today and tell your story about Fortunato chocolate.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And pretty awesome that you're a mayor who does a podcast. I don't know what the precedent is. There's a lot of mayors doing podcasts out there in the world, but hats off to you. That's a pretty good thing.
Thank
like
you.
Said, great little studio here too that Tim put together.
Very fun, very fun. So Uniquely Issaquah is the show that we do where we love to tell great stories to the community. And I'm new to your story and I am very excited. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay. I'm Adam Pearson. I'm one of the owners of Fortunato Chocolate. If you want to find us, we're over in Issaquah Commons, near REI, BECU, Massage MV, Just Poke. And then we also have a factory shop over by Top Pot Donuts and the Gas Lamp, which is an open kitchen that you can go in and check out. I own the business along with my brother Brian, who also lives here in Issaquah, and my dad Dan, who's in San Diego. We buy cocoa beans in Peru. We've been doing business in Peru for going on 20 years now. Both my brother and I have Peruvian wives. By the way, feel free to cut in here.
Absolutely.
All right, because I'm just going to launch right into it. So, we've been doing business in Peru for 20 years. A lot of people ask us how we got into the chocolate business in the first place and why we're in Issaquah, which are both valid, very, very valid, legitimate.
By the way, we're
questions.
really glad you're in Issaquah.
Thank you. Well, we were chatting a little bit before we got onto the podcast. My brother Brian, you were mentioning you're an engineering type, but you're also the mayor. So my brother Brian is also an engineering type, and he's the one who is meticulous and focuses on all the little small details, which we'll get into some of them, that are required for making delicious chocolate. We all eat chocolate. We don't really necessarily know where it comes from and what it takes to make chocolate very good. So we're proud. We're proud of the chocolate that we serve in our shops at Fortunato Chocolate. We've been doing it for 15 years now.
Wow.
Even though the new shop's only been open 5 months, and the first shop's only been open for a year. And we'll get into all that happened, how that happened. So my dad Dan is a serial entrepreneur. My dad comes from a family of entrepreneurs. His father passed away when my dad was only 4 years old. So my dad grew up without a father, and he was raised by strong women. And that's where he attributes a lot of his strength to the fact that his mother and all of his aunts were such strong people.
Aww.
And they all lived through the Depression. So he's the generation after the people who lived through the Great Depression. In the early 2000s, this would be like 2003, my dad went to Peru to see if he could sell this mine air filter cleaners, which they did not want. So they did 9 months of research and stuff, and it went out the window. But the head of the maintenance department did want a new supplier of hydraulic hoses and nuts and bolts. Caterpillar was the only supplier, and everybody knew they were jacking up the prices, so they wanted to see if somebody would come in and compete against Caterpillar. And my dad we call him the riverboat gambler. So my dad being the riverboat gambler says, yeah, we'll do that. So he gets my poor brother down there to manage this project where we're importing hydraulic hoses and nuts and bolts into Peru from the United States to sell to this gold mine. So we did that for 3 years, and it was terrible. Caterpillar was just killing us. And even though our prices were 40% less expensive, we just got killed for we had a 3-year contract, and we just got killed. And so after 3 years, we made money, but we weren't able to grow the business.
Right.
So we made some money, but we weren't able to grow the business. During this 3 years while we're working there, I got kicked out of college, and my dad said, you're spoiled. I know you had some hard times as a teenager, but we all went through hard times. I understand that you think your life is hard, but you're basically, as we said, you're spoiled. You got to go see something else. You got to go see how other people live. Because I was an average student. I ended up doing all right on the SATs. I got into college. He was paying for me to go to this private school, and it was really nice. It was University of Redlands. And he said, you're going to this private school, you got room and board paid for, but you're screwing up. Like, how could it be? So I was 20 at that time. And he said, yeah, you got to go see how other people live. So the way that the mining business was set up is we were selling the stuff to a local business who would then sell it to the mine. Anyways, it got us tax credits. And one of the local partners we had was a garage. It was an auto mechanic, and they did maintenance on the pickup trucks for the mine. So my dad got me this job working as an auto mechanic This is a crazy story. But
In Peru.
Yeah, in Peru, in the city of Cajamarca. He got me this job working as an auto mechanic, making $100 a month. He set it up with the guy that I had to make the local minimum wage. And so while I was there, I met my wife and got married.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
lovely.
so I met my wife, and then 8 months later got married. And now she lives here in Issaquah with me. And if you come into Fortunato Chocolate, you can meet her.
How was your Spanish?
Perfect.
It's perfect.
So when I met my wife, she spoke like a little bit of English, and I
Yeah.
spoke a little bit of Spanish, but I spoke a little bit more Spanish than she could speak English. So we've always spoken Spanish in our house.
Oh,
and so
I
our
love
three
that.
sons, Isaiah, Daniel, and Levi, 10, 7, and 4, Spanish is all their first language.
That's awesome.
Because we speak Spanish in their house. And I'll just say quickly, one thing I love about Issaquah, it's such an international community.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool. We get a lot of Spanish speakers coming into the store. But anyways, there's people from all over the world. So I went there, I lived there, I got married. Mary moved back to the United States with me, with the idea that we were going to move back down to Peru after I graduated college and go work for this mining business. But in the interim, the business ended. They decided to exit the business. And then they tried a series of new businesses that didn't pan out. They tried to export trout.
So this is
yeah.
your father and
This is my father
brother?
and my brother.
Yep.
Yeah, so I came back to college, so I wasn't involved. And during that time, the 3 years was up. They looked at their opportunities, and basically what they concluded was, if we have an advantage in this world now, it's that we're English-speaking Americans.
With connections to the U.S.
Yeah, but and we know how to do business in Peru. So we're Americans, but we know about Peru now. Because they were managing logistics, because the hydraulic hoses and the nuts and bolts would come into the port of Lima, which is the capital, but it's sort of central. And my brother was managing the entire operation of bringing imported goods through customs in Peru and transporting them up into the Andes Mountains, which is like an 18-hour bus ride or truck ride. And so he knew logistics. So they kind of concluded that was their competitive advantage in the world. So they decided to stay in Peru. So one thing they looked into was trying to buy trout. Somehow they came across this big trout farm, and my dad knew somebody who was a fish buyer in China. So they were going to try to buy trout. The name of the city is Huánuco. It's east of Lima, but it's central Peru. And they had a buyer for the trout, and they were going to flash freeze the trout and export it to China. But at the last minute, it fell apart. And then my brother tried to pursue a project growing ethanol. So around this time in the United States, they had a tax credit because they were trying to mix petroleum fuel with ethanol.
A little bit nicer fuel.
Yeah, a little bit nicer fuel. And they were going to use corn, but it turned out that if you would use sugarcane, it would be even cheaper, but you can't grow sugarcane in most of the United States. So he was going to try to put together this project growing ethanol. In northern Peru, there's long stretches of coastal desert, which is highly fertile land, but it never rains. But some of that land has what's groundwater. So he was going to try to find land with groundwater and pump it up to the surface and grow sugarcane. But too many people had that idea, and they were selling ethanol much cheaper than what it could be produced in the United States. And so right when they were gonna break ground on that project, the tax credit got revoked. So we couldn't do that. So my brother, during that time, by the way, got married to a Peruvian woman who we met working at the mine. And so he was a man in Peru with no job, trying to find a business to work on. He started teaching English. And then through all of this is a wild series of events, but through, again, just a wild series of events, we ended up finding that the cafeteria at the gold mine wanted to buy produce for the cafeteria. And Cajamarca, the city, is also the name of the state. So in Peru, they have states, like how we have states here in the United States. And so Cajamarca is both the capital city and the name of the department or the state.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly mountainous, but up in the corner, like up in the very remote corner of that state, next to a river, which is the border of the state, there's like this little pocket of jungle. And the cafeteria wanted to buy their produce within the department because they thought that would be there's good politics. But nobody in that mountain town really wanted to go out to that jungle because they considered it to be, I don't know, the sticks, backwater. And also that area had a reputation for organized crime and mafia activity. So the cafeteria was having a really hard time. Or actually, it was a big French company that was running the cafeteria called Sodexo. They were having a hard time finding somebody to venture out to that part of the department to buy produce and ship it back to the cafeteria. And so my brother Brian and my dad heard that, and they decided to go visit that region, and they liked it. They were swept away by it. They thought it was really interesting, and it's hot and active, and it's an agricultural town. And but while they were out there looking at bananas, because that's what one of the things they were going to buy was bananas. Bananas are shade trees for cacao. So cacao is the main ingredient in chocolate. So cacao doesn't like direct sunlight. It likes shade. So they're out there looking at bananas and stuff, and they kept seeing cacao pods. We knew nothing. I mean, we knew nothing about chocolate, cacao. We didn't know they didn't know anything about it. They just saw these really. Have you seen a cacao pod before?
No.
So a cacao pod looks like a football, and it has ridges around it, and it's got a husk that kind of reminds you of a pumpkin. If you cut it open on the inside, there's these seeds in there. They're covered in a sugary white gel. It's the sugariness of the gel that allows you to ferment cacao, and then fermentation is what makes chocolate taste like chocolate, because otherwise cacao doesn't taste like chocolate. So Brian and my dad decided that Brian was going to move out there and learn more about cacao. And basically what we discovered, what we learned, is that in order for you to make really good chocolate, really good tasting chocolate, not the industrial candy bars that you might buy at the grocery store that you can buy for 99 cents, but really delicious, deeply delicious chocolate, you have to do the fermentation and the fermentation and the drying of the cacao in a certain way. But because of the very low world market prices that most cacao farmers receive for their cacao, and this is true of a lot of agricultural products. This is where you get things like fair trade, for example,
right,
or equal exchange or whatever. Because of the very low world commodity prices that the subsistence farmers, it's poor out there.
Right.
There's no incentive for them. There's no incentive for them, and they don't have the capital to do the fermenting and drying in such a way that it would
to improve the product to that,
that it would
really
be
luxury level.
Yeah, so even they could go through all the work of doing it correctly, but they're not in the supply chain that would lead to them this particular region was not in the supply chain that would lead to them getting better prices.
Right.
It's a remote area east of the northern Andes Mountains. It's really remote. So they're just selling their cacao to international cacao buyers, and it ends up in whatever, Hershey's Kisses or whatever, right? So we started looking into it. My brother started learning about how you ferment and dry cacao correctly. He decided to build a processing facility in this really remote canyon. And the reason we ended up choosing this one remote canyon out of all of the places we could have set up shop in this region, and the name of the city that we were outside of is called Haiyan, was one day my dad got really interested in trying to understand how you could test cacao genetics, because like wine grapes, there's a bunch of different varieties of cocoa beans, and we wanted to be able to tell people what the variety was, what the genetic variety was. So he started doing research, and he found that the places you could do that in the United States, the main entity that does that in the United States is the USDA. So, and there's two labs, one's in Miami and one's in Beltsville, Maryland. So he just cold called Miami first, and no one answered. And then he cold called Beltsville, Maryland, and the lead geneticist answered the phone over there because his secretary was on vacation. And my dad got to chat, and this guy's from Iowa. He's an old Midwestern boy. And so he and my dad got along because my dad's originally from Fort Wayne, Indiana. And the guy agreed to help us do genetic testing on our cocoa beans. So this is before Brian built the facility out in the canyon, but it's around the same time. So basically the way that you do genetic testing on cacao is you take leaves, you vacuum seal them, and then you FedEx them to the lab, and they do the DNA testing on the leaves. So we did that, and when the results came back, they told us that the samples that Brian sent were a variety that was thought to be extinct.
Oh my gosh, how exciting.
It was thought to have been wiped out by disease in the early 1900s. And we think it's because this particular canyon where we've been buying cacao in this little cacao growing region for 15 years now. There's a river. There's a thick river that runs in front of it, and it's surrounded on all sides by like tall jungle mountains. And the way that the geneticist described it to us is midges that pollinate cacao trees can't go across a river, and they can't go over the mountain. So you just have this remote, isolated canyon where this cacao was growing, and no one really ever knew about it. So the variety of cacao that we discovered was one of the really sought-after varieties of cacao. It was thought to only grow in Ecuador. It was thought to have been wiped out by disease in the early 1900s. And
here it is in this valley.
And here it is. So my brother built a processing facility out in the jungle where we could buy this special variety of cacao and do the fermenting and drying ourselves. And in 2011, so in 2010, we started making chocolate, and we decided to have our chocolate made by this old Swiss chocolate making company called Max Falkland that's been around for 120 years. So they've been making our chocolate since we got started. So we started this whole cacao journey in 2007. It wasn't until 2010 that we actually had chocolate made. So we 3 years we're just funding this whole thing off of our savings. And then in 2010 we made our first sell to a Swiss baker who was around the Swiss chocolate making factory. In 2011 we made an announcement in the New York Times that we had chocolate with this rediscovered variety of cocoa beans. By the way, we voluntarily paid 10 times fair trade premiums to these cacao farmers. So fair trade is $120 per ton over the world market prices. We pay 10 times that. So we're helping a lot of subsistence farmers do better. So starting in 2011, we started wholesaling our chocolate to, it was never available to the public for a really long time. We started wholesaling our chocolate to high-end restaurants and chocolatiers. And over the course of the following 9 years, we ended up selling chocolate in about 40 countries. So we built up a significant wholesale business selling chocolate to fancy restaurants. In 2019, after 10 or 11 years of living in the jungle full time. So my brother was living in Cajamarca, but going out to the jungle every 2 weeks. He had a newborn daughter who he left behind. So my brother has sacrificed a lot, going out and overseeing our cacao buying operation and our fermenting and drying operation, which he still does to this day. He goes back and forth from Issaquah to Peru, making sure that the cacao is fermented in such a way that it comes out really delicious. So in 2013, we were on Parts Unknown with Anthony Bourdain.
Oh, yeah.
So if you ever go back and watch the Peru episode, that's all about us and my brother. And and the name of our company, Fortunato. Fortunato is a person. He's a Peruvian cacao farmer. It was on his farm so we took hundreds of samples in that canyon. It was on his farm that they found the purest expression of this one type of cocoa bean ever found on record, which is called Nacional. The name of the variety is called Nacional. And in particular, it was the 4th sample out of 20 on his farm that is considered to be like maybe the genetic origin of this variety of cocoa bean. And so our chocolate is called Fortunato number 4. We've cloned that particular tree thousands of times. We operate a clone garden out in this canyon. So we clone these trees, and then if farmers want to come into our project, they can take clones, plant the trees. It takes 2 or 3 years for a tree to start putting off fruit, and then that's how we're able to grow the business by more and more people planting out this variety of cacao on their farms. All right, so from 2011 until 2020, our business is growing. We're selling wholesale to restaurants and chocolatiers in 40 countries. It was great. It was straightforward. It became a good business. We never knew the people who were eating our chocolate. Basically, a UPS truck pulls up. We put a bunch of boxes on there, and then they drive away. And as long as we keep getting purchase orders, we assume that everybody's happy. And we're selling to like really swanky, fancy restaurants. But when the pandemic hit and restaurants started to get shut down, it all started this is 2020. It all started to fall apart on us, and we're buying cacao from 500 families, and they're depending on us for their income, and we didn't have a way to sell the chocolate. Everything started to implode on us, so it was just on a shot in the dark. I went online and took a course on how to do e-commerce, how to set up an e-commerce business.
Your family's hilarious.
Yeah, and how to do Facebook, how to do advertising on Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah.
I took a course. We hired a website designer to build an e-commerce shop for us. This is the beginning of 2020. I started running Facebook and Instagram ads, and just in a matter of a couple of months, we built an e-commerce business.
Wow.
That just totally took off. It was really lucky. I mean,
Wow.
it really worked out well. And that was the first time we ever knew our customers, the first time we ever sold chocolate directly to the public. People started leaving reviews online. I'm telling you, we would put the boxes on a UPS truck, it would drive away, and we would never hear about it. We just assumed people liked it. But they didn't even know what chocolate they were eating. I mean, they just knew that they ordered a chocolate mousse or a tiramisu, and it tasted really good. And it happened to be our chocolate.
But now you do.
So that was the first time we had ever interacted with customers directly, and we really liked it.
Yeah.
We really, really liked it. And so we rented a place here in Issaquah over in the Cascade. No.
Cascade Business Park.
It's not the Cascade Business Park. It's over by where Top Pot Donuts is.
Yeah, Raleigh Business Center.
It's Raleigh. It's Raleigh. Yeah, Raleigh's the landlord over there. We just rented an office, and we rented a warehouse to store our chocolate. And then when people would buy the chocolate, we would bring the chocolate from our warehouse over to this little office in Raleigh, and we set up a little shipping station. We hired some employees, and they just started shipping chocolate out of this little office to tens of thousands of customers all over the country. It saved our business. We would have gone out of business. Certainly, if it wasn't for that e-commerce pivot, the whole thing would have ended, because our restaurant business totally died.
You know, one thing you said just cracked me right up is you talked about it being lucky. And my head is spinning about how often your family has pivoted from one idea to another. It doesn't feel lucky to me. It feels like you guys are unbeatable. Like nothing can take you down because you're just going to pivot to the next idea.
Yeah. Although it's an interesting thing. My dad, at the very beginning I was talking about my dad's dad who died when he was 4. He was a restaurateur, and it was Midwest. He owned these diners. My biological grandfather's name is Victor Wick, and he owned these restaurants called Vic's Diners, and he was famous for pies. He would sell pies, and so I don't know.
Maybe there's something in the genetics about seeing your customers enjoy.
Yeah, I think we have found the thing that we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So, 2020 we started doing the e-commerce. The only problem is you can't ship chocolate during the summer, so we had to lay off. We had to furlough our employees 2 summers in a row in 2020 and 2021, and I didn't want to furlough. This is where I came in. So I didn't want to furlough our employees again, and so I talked to my dad and my brother, and I said, we need to open up a shop, so we can keep selling chocolate during the summer, because we only had 2 employees. We had 2 employees who were doing all this fulfillment for us, and then we were doing it. We were involved too, and they thought that was a bad idea. They thought it was a really bad idea. But I don't know. I think in our blood, because of who my biological grandfather is, I think we're sort of meant to be these Midwest style food people. I don't know. I just think that's who we are. And so I just had this vision of people in Issaquah, people in the community, being able to come into our chocolate shop. And it was my idea we give away free hot chocolate. We give away free frozen bananas dipped in chocolate. I just really wanted to do that. I just really had this concept of being a place where people could just kind of come in and drink hot chocolate and eat samples and just hang around, like you would do if you went into to eat a slice of pie in Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's what I was thinking. Like, what if we could do a pie place but with chocolate, but here in Issaquah, and then people in Issaquah could come hang out, and I could have my kids work in the shop, and my wife would be hanging around, and Brian and his kid could come in, and it would just be. Yeah, it would be like a Fort Wayne pie place in Issaquah.
Your face really lights up when you talk about it. I think you're right. This is you. This is your family.
Well, I'm trying to fight back tears too. I could easily choke up a little bit. So, so November 2000, I guess in November 2021, it's barely a year ago, we opened up our first shop, which is over by the Gaslamp Bar and Grill. Yeah. When we opened up that shop, so for the longest time, all we ever sold to restaurants were 1.1 pound blocks of chocolate. And then they would buy it and they'd melt it down and they'd make stuff with it. When we put up our e-commerce site, we went online with just 2 milk chocolates and 1 dark chocolate, and what you could buy was a 1.1 pound block of chocolate. Those were the only products we had for more than a decade. Just these huge bricks of chocolate. The good thing is we were wholesalers, so we could sell it at a wholesale price. So you can get this world-class chocolate for the same price, ounce per ounce, as like a $3 or $4 bar of chocolate in the grocery store, which people around here buy. You buy that all day, every day. So it's a fair price, but it's a world-class chocolate with this whole backstory, and you're doing good for these cacao farmers and stuff. So in November 2021, we opened up our shop, and it was just a big empty room with a counter and stacks of these 1.1 pound blocks of chocolate. That's our whole offering when we opened up in November of 2021. The woman who worked for us doing fulfillment, her name's Rosa Valencia. Great person, super hard worker. Her husband, Javier Valencia, who's our chocolatier, who you can go see right now if you go into the shop over by the gas station. He's in there. It's an open kitchen, and we got a whole team in there now. He's been a cook and a chef for 20 years, and he recently had a business making wedding cakes, and Rosa mentioned to him that we were opening up this little shop, and he said, hey, if they need any help, if they need someone to come make some products for them, I would like to. I'd be interested in stopping whatever I'm doing and doing that. And we said, yeah, come in. So we bought some metal tables. We just bought like some really rudimentary machines, and Javier has created 40 or 50 products. All of the products in our shop right now have nothing to do with me or my dad or my brother. They're all from the mind of Javier.
Wow.
And so he started making products, and from November 2021 till now, we have morphed into whatever we are now. But it's an ongoing story. So, and then in July of 2022, we have filled up the first space with kitchen equipment, and also it's kind of an off the beaten path area.
Mm-hmm.
In July 2022, we opened up a second shop here in Issaquah, which is it's in the Issaquah Commons.
Yep.
And that's
regular
it's
storefront.
just a regular storefront, but still we hope that people are getting that Midwest pie diner vibe when they go in there. So free hot chocolate, all kinds of samples, and then just every day it seems like new products that Javier's making. And then some of the products that Javier invented for the shop, created for the shop, we're also starting to put online.
Yeah.
And we have at least the concept of our e-commerce store is that it should also replicate the shop. So we're trying to put as many of our new products online as we can. And then also I send out a daily email. So I write an email every single day just about whatever the business is up to. We have about 50,000 subscribers to that daily newsletter. So if anybody wants to follow along with the story, they can go to fortunatochocolate.com, and there's a pop-up where you can subscribe.
So the story's not over yet, is what you're telling me.
It's funny. So all right. So that's a good question, a very insightful question. I guess one thing that I think we're learning, and there's books about this, like Malcolm Gladwell wrote the 10,000 hour rule.
Yep.
I think it takes 10 years or 15 years before you even actually get good at what it is you're trying to be good at.
So be patient.
Yeah, so be patient. And I think, at least for us, that it took us 15 years just to get to the thing we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Which is now. Which is really, if my biological grandfather wouldn't have passed away, probably we would have inherited Vic's Diners.
Oh, yeah.
You'd
definitely be in Vic's Diners.
We'd be in the diners business. So it took us 15 years to kind of, actually it took my dad a lifetime, for us to all sort of, I think, work our way back to what we naturally should be doing anyways.
Adam, it's such a great story.
Yeah.
I mean, for me as the mayor of Issaquah, the one thing I love about, I came here in 1993 for 2 years, never left, is these small businesses, is these amazing ideas that grow organically into a profitable business. And it's unique. It is a one-off. We're so fortunate that we have you in 2 different locations in Issaquah, and that you have such a great story, but also an open door that you are, can go in and see products being made, and you can also go have a great experience in your store.
Well, and Issaquah is an all-time great place to be a small business owner and to open up a unique little business, because the people of Issaquah are, I could probably tear up talking about this right now too, have been amazingly supportive.
Oh, fantastic.
I think there's tremendous dedication amongst the people of Issaquah to support small businesses.
Yeah.
So, I am tearing up.
You are tearing up.
Because a lot of small business owners maybe have some kind of a dream of what they want to do. You have some vision, and most small businesses don't succeed.
Right.
But for us, since 2020, and then since we've opened up shops here, it's gone way better than we ever could have imagined.
Oh, amazing.
But that's only possible if people come out.
Yep.
And if they tell their friends.
Yep.
And with the support of the community. So Issaquah has proved to be just a tremendous place to be a small business owner.
I hope you never.
It's been a dream come true.
I hope you never outgrow us.
I don't. Because we only use this one type of cocoa bean from this one place, and that's what we're dedicated to doing.
Yeah.
Like we could try to grow. We could try to grow our business really fast by bringing in other varieties, but that's not who we are.
Yeah.
Fortunato is a real guy.
Yeah.
Right. So we wouldn't be a Fortunato chocolate unless we were using this one type of cocoa bean. And there's a strict upper limit to how fast we can grow, and I don't think we're supposed to be more than a special Issaquah company. So if people want to come get some Fortunato chocolate, they got to come into Issaquah and see us. I don't think we're going to really go much further than Issaquah. We'll just be a classic Issaquah company. That's the game plan.
Adam, I think this is an amazing story, but this is my first time hearing this whole story, and people will watch and listen to you and your story and be inspired. And I think this is a catalyst for more entrepreneurs, creative spirits to learn a great lesson from you about the patience, the number of pivots you had to make, and it's for a person who's been involved with the city so long and so in love with this community like you are. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, well, I thank you very much. Yeah, and for all the people out there who are dreaming of starting a business, it's going to take 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
And start small. There's a security guard over at the Issaquah Commons.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. He's a real big guy, and he wants to start a clothing business.
Yep.
For big people. And I told him, just start with a couple $100, make some clothes, see if you can sell those, and then go up to a little bit more. And just over the years, little by little, you can grow it. But there's nothing really stopping anybody from taking a shot with a couple $100. You can do that. But don't take a second mortgage on your house and invest your entire life. Hey, start slow, serve the people who are in your community, and little by little, one step at a time. I think just about anybody with a dream could definitely start the business, especially here in Issaquah, where the people are so supportive. So there you go.
That is amazing advice to end us off today. Thank you so much
Thank you for having me.
joining me on Uniquely Issaquah. And like I said, we're so glad we have you in town.
And thank you for having me.